Lindsay.
Here.
Secretary Annette Campo. Treasurer Lisa Milton.
Here.
Trustee Scott Davis.
Here.
Trustee Carrie Nicholson.
Here.
Trustee Larry Williams.
We will observe our customary moment of silence. Okay. Larry, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda with an addition to item 3A, appoint Carrie Nicholson as acting secretary for the Board of Education work session of October 8th, 2018.
So support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will move to action item, board business. Appoint Carrie Nicholson as acting secretary for the Board of Education work session of October 8th, 2018. Background: due to the absence of board secretary Matt Campo, it is necessary to appoint an acting secretary to carry out the duties of the Board of Education secretary that are required of this meeting. The recommendation is the superintendent that this action item be approved as presented.
It sure is.
So move for approval.
Support.
Any discussion? Start with Larry.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Move to members of the audience may address the board on agenda items only. Okay. We will move on to board topics. Advanced placement psychology textbook proposal.
Would you like to come up? Don Beck will address this recommendation.
All right, well, good evening. So the Curriculum Council on September 19th heard a proposal from the High School Social Studies Department to approve a new Advanced Placement Psychology textbook. The Advanced Placement Psychology class is actually not new to the high school, although it was taught in a different format. It was an online course in the past, or a hybrid class, I guess we should say, and now it's a full course that has two sections. So we have a need because A, we have a lot more students taking this in a standard classroom format to accommodate our expanding the AP curriculum in the high school, and B, the textbook that we were using for that hybrid class before is both fairly old. It's an 11-year-old psychology textbook that contains some out-of-date material, and also it's a standard 100-level college textbook, just a general textbook that you would find in any, say, community college or university course, which isn't necessarily a poor choice for an AP class because that's the level of rigor that we're looking for in advanced placement. But because AP is aimed at passing the College Board's exam in May, it has a particular series of needs that our high school department thought that could be much better served by picking a particular book that would fit those. And you find that actually in most AP courses, whether it's English, psychology, world history, whatever it may be. So the one that we're proposing to you is Myers Psychology for the AP course. And this is actually a brand new book, 2018. And Ms. Brownell is going to be passing that around right now. And there's some wonderful, this is one of the two main texts used in the U.S. Across the United States in AP psychology courses. It meets all our needs for the reasons that I just told you before. It's newer, it's brand new, it contains updated information. It also meets the certification requirements that we have to testify to the College Board that our textbooks are between 5 and 8 years old. It also has many wonderful online resources, both for the students and the instructors, including videos, interactive activities, extension lessons, sometimes even down to the very page and paragraph level. And finally, as you would imagine from a text that says it's for the AP course, it's directly related to the standards and for practice in the AP class. So the end of chapter assignments and the tests that come with it directly imitate the types of questions and the rigor that our students will be having to face when they come to that AP test in May. So that's the general recommendation we have for this, and Mrs. Brownell was kind enough to come with us tonight, so if you have any questions, I will direct you to her, and we'd be open to answering whatever we can.
I have a question. It's more about the quotation than it is the actual textbook, if that's okay.
Sure.
I am curious, in some of this maybe I'm just not used to buying textbook, but is there a certain cyclicality in the pricing through the year? Is there an advantage to buying in December or January so you're avoiding semester changeover?
Sales.
Sales, exactly. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, unfortunately not with major textbook publishers. They're generally a one price throughout the entire year.
Okay.
Sometimes you can get a bulk discount, like they have tiered pricings,
Okay.
but other than that, there's not really an advantage.
All right. Thanks.
That's a great question.
The author is Hope College?
Yes.
Yeah, which is very interesting. And this is a nationally recognized book, though. It's very well respected.
Yeah, and he donates his proceeds from the book to a bunch of charitable entities. One of them is the APA, American Psychiatric Association, and focusing on the instruction of psychology in the K-12.
Very cool.
I like how right in here it gives AP exam tip. Look up there in the corner.
It's very readable. For high school students, we kind of piloted the statistics chapter, and the examples are very relevant to the students, and the language made it very easy for the students to comprehend what he's trying to get across as far as the statistics section went, which can be kind of tricky. I was impressed with him.
As far as how so this isn't a curriculum change, but this is just a proposal to talk about it, and then we would come back at the next meeting and actually take action to approve the purchase.
And we'll be making that book available, right? Central office for people to come in and take a look at it if they need to.
Okay, so it'll be similar to how we would do a curriculum change. So is it 30 days that we need to give them, or is it going to be, or can we take action at the next meeting?
It sits for 30 days, so
Is it 30 days?
you can see it,
Okay.
but you're approving the textbook and approving the purchase. That's not my understanding.
Correct.
Correct.
We're not
So
taking any
explanation
action tonight.
next
We're not taking any action tonight.
No, but, so if you read his last paragraph, it's not in the general fund budget. This wasn't something that was budgeted for.
Okay.
So you're just approving the actual, us
Purchase.
allowing them to use the book. We would then look at purchasing it later on.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
They are reaching out to the Community Foundation to see if the Community Foundation would be interested in supporting the cost of this book.
Okay.
So we just need to have you be aware, put it out there, and then move forward.
Any other questions?
Should apply to both community foundations for half and half funding.
Pardon me?
Should apply to both community foundations for half and half funding, Albion and Marshall.
Oh, yes, we should.
Just saying.
Okay.
Right.
Any more
Thank you.
questions?
Might as well stay out there.
Oh, okay.
Next, we're going to move on to 2018 M-STEP results.
And what's it here?
Randy, did you want to say it first?
Pardon me?
Did you want to say it first?
No, I wanted you to present the results and we'll do a wrap up.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the booklet you have in front of you is a lot of statistics and graphs and charts. Remember, I presented one of these to you last year, and I decided it wasn't big enough, so I added more to it this year. It actually might be a little bit more than you would ever need, but I thought that I would give you plenty of information. I did add narratives into it. And if it is just too much for you and you concentrate on just, say, the first 6, 7 pages, that's pretty much all you really need to know because it gives you the overview. But I did want to put it out there for you so that you could dig down a little deeper into the grade level data if you wanted to. And then here on the presentation, what I'm going to do is give you that kind of 10,000 foot overview in 20 minutes or less. I'm just kidding, about 5 or 10 minutes here, I'll go over all of it, okay? So first of all, I wanted to tell you how the state did. Would you mind turning off the light over here, please, someone? Thank you. I want to tell you how the state did on the MSTEP and SAT test. As you know, every spring, our 3rd through 8th graders take standardized state testing to determine their proficiency in math, ELA, and social studies. And then our 11th graders do that same. So you can see that our 3rd and 4th graders across the state, this isn't just Marshall, this is statewide, were basically flat. They didn't change in ELA, in language arts. Then the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th all dropped. So across the state, there's a trend downward in ELA. And then in math, basically everything stayed the same from last year to this. There was a slight decrease, but statistically it's about the same. Social studies, it was a drop in 5th and 8th, but then it rose in 11th grade. And then our SAT across the state scores dipped in both ELA and math. So if you want to, again, just to say this pretty generally, basically there was a trend downward across the state in pretty much everything except for 11th grade social studies. That was about the only highlight across the state. I will tell you, if you look at the state website, they try and put smiley faces on a lot of it and say, we actually rose in this and that, but statistically a 0.3% rise, can you really say that's much? I mean, that could be error across the state. But I understand why they do that. But really, we had a downward trend with a couple nice spots. Now, I thought you might want to know the county-wide. So in the CISD, we fell in ELA across Calhoun County by 3 to 4% in all grades across ELA. And that's over here on the top. Nope. Oh, crap. What did I just do? There we go. Is this middle thing up under? Yes. All right, so this is the ELA, and you see we dropped in every single area across the county. And then in math, it was a drop and a fall and a flat. So 5th grade fell a little bit, 7th grade rose a decent amount, and then all others were flat. So you can see over here, it's basically flat with just a couple rising and fall. Okay? So kind of in ELA, kind of matched the state a bit, and in math, we have a brighter spot in 7th grade, if you want to think of it that way. And then here's social studies for the CISD. Decrease in 5th, but then an increase in 8th and 11th. And that's not too bad. And then the SAT was flat. So again, we matched the state level across the county, except we had this increase in 8th grade. So this increase right here is not what they saw. And yeah, I didn't put a chart for this one up here. I didn't put a chart for this one.
So are you saying that the county matched the state, or are you saying Marshall Public Schools matched the county?
This is just county. Marshall's in here, but this is for all the county.
But when you're saying it was matching, who is it matching?
The state.
The state, so
Yeah.
that our county did similar to the rest of the state.
You got it. I haven't gotten to Marshall yet, but I'm sorry I was confusing. But yeah, so the county is parallel to what the state is. Yeah, in most every area with a couple brighter spots in the county. Okay? So now let's go ahead and get to Marshall. So this is a graph that simply shows if we took all the scores for MSTEP together and looked at them as one score. So it's a little bit deceiving because it's taking 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th ELA and jamming them all together as one score, which is really, I mean, it's such a broad stroke, but it is something to look at. And you can see it's for ELA, math, science, and social studies. if we look at this, we can see that it's actually fairly positive in that we had a downward trend through last year, and then we stopped that and even moved up slightly in ELA and math. And then in social studies, we took a huge upswing, which is great. Science, you can see it stopped here, and I didn't talk about science as one of the tested areas because the state made a major change in science this past year, that they've adopted what are called the next generation science standards, a whole new set of science standards. They did this a couple of years ago, and this past year, they started testing them. So they said, since we're testing those and we're trying to figure out how to test it, we're not going to give you data on that. So you're going to see, both in your packet and on here, there's no science data. They said we might give you some data on it later, but they're not sure their test is valid. So they said, we don't want to give you data and make you think you're doing great or you're doing poorly on the test when we don't even know if the test is valid. So, fair enough. So all our kids took the test and are learning the test, but not until 2 years from now will the test be actually included on anyone's scores. But anyway, so going back to this, this is encouraging, again, looking at broad strokes, but it's encouraging because we're seeing if we had a downward slide, we've reversed that at least slightly here and in a major way in social studies. So that's good. SAT, our upward trend is continuing. We've only taken the test now for 3 years. But we, yet again, increased. This is the composite of all SAT scores from both our Opportunity High School and from the traditional high school. And down here, this is the county level SAT scores. So we're, of course, higher than that. So that's encouraging as well. So now if we do a chart where we compare the state and county with Marshall itself, starting with just the graph, Marshall is right here at the top. You can see last year we had a dip that fell below the county. Again, this is putting everything together, so broad strokes. And like I said, we turned that around and we've lifted it up. So we've now matched the county. Or I'm sorry, my mistake. This is the state.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mistake. Okay, so the yellow line is the state. So now we've matched the state. This is the county. And then over here, this is the list of all the schools in the county, and when we put them all together, Marshall comes out second, just below Olivet, so we're 5% below Olivet, 6% below Olivet. There's one right below us, which is Lakeview, and then pretty much everyone falls into line below that. So we're second in the county.
Is that graph in here somewhere?
That is, it's right near the back. I'm sorry to make you jump around. I should have put page numbers on here. See page 4. Yeah. Page 8. Yeah, that is in the very back. I put a comparison.
Page 57.
Thank you. And when we're looking at these, which would you say all of that is the one that would most likely match us, or what would match us when we're thinking about like socioeconomic and
in the county?
other, yeah, like.
No, I would probably need to answer that, right?
Yeah.
Which is the closest in the county?
For Marshall, it's gonna probably be Harper, Penfield.
Yeah, so Penfield is right here at 28%. We were at 38%. And where is Harper is 33.7. We're at 38.1.
As far as size, etc.
Yep. Okay, so and it's funny you asked that because, oh, actually I've got one more before that. So this is Marshall's SAT. Remember the one I just showed you was 3rd through 8th. That's M-STEP. And I'm always going to show you the high school test too. So this is Marshall's SAT score, the 11th grade score, compared with the county and the state. And you saw pretty much the same before, but so here's Marshall, way up here. And then if we get here, here's the state, and here's the entire county. And down here, instead of it listed off in the names, we've got a chart that shows every school. So Marshall has the highest SAT score, followed by Olivet, and then Homer, then Lakeview, Harper Creek, Union City. This one divides off. Our Opportunity School is down here. So that's why these two are in darker blue. So our SAT scores were very impressive, as always.
Can you remind me too, does everybody take the SAT now, or just the people that are planning on going to college?
Great question. Yeah, everyone now takes the
Everyone
SAT
does.
in 11th grade.
Okay.
Same application we've always done, even with the ACT. Unlike other states do it only those that are declaring that they're going to college. So when you compare like us in Wisconsin, it's a misnomer.
Okay.
Because Wisconsin only assesses those students that volunteer to take it. You asked about socioeconomic, Carrie, and on page 61 of your report, we have ILEX, that's a system that gives us good data. We can ask or tailor reports. We've asked for a comparative based on demographics, and basically this is economically disadvantaged and size, is it? Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't want to jump ahead.
That's okay. So there it is.
So just in your report, you can see what our system says the other comparative districts are in our same socioeconomic. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. I wasn't going to talk about it later, but since we're talking about it now, so yeah, like the data system we use, which is IDEX, you can put in whatever you want to compare your system to. So it's a great question to say, well, okay, we're doing very well compared to our county. You know, Marshall's number 2, K3, number 1 in the SAT. How are we doing compared to other schools in the entire state that compare to us when we talk about our size and with the same free and reduced lunch count, which means our socioeconomics the same? And it popped out, and you could say, give me the top like 40 schools this size. I just said, give me the top, I think that's 10 schools. So rank us with the top 10 schools that are most like us. And so it did. So you can see these schools are listed off, and according to that, we're down here at about number 7, which maybe you could say, wow, that's not really all that great, but when you look at the numbers, they're all fairly bunched together and close, aside from the outliers. So we're at a 38%. Northview up here is 6% higher, which that's a pretty good amount, but not an incredible amount. That's not, I mean, Wayland Union that's way up at the top, or down at the other end, Harper Creek, you know, that's 7%. That's still not all that bad, to be honest with you, when you're taking that wide stroke like I was talking about. Okay? And I did the same thing with the SAT, so you can see how does the SAT compare. This one we're all going to be much happier with. There's those same schools, and Marshall is 3rd on that list. But what's interesting about that is it gives us the list that has our high school and our alternative high school scores averaged. That's what the 1029.3 is. If we took the 1029.3 and removed the opportunity high school, which really doesn't have as many students and serves a different population, and only used our traditional high school, Marshall High School, we had a 1064 as our score for that. That would put us way up past number 1. Does that make sense to you? The system wouldn't allow me to do that because it took the standard number from the state, which automatically takes both Marshall high schools and puts them together. So we have to manually do that.
As an illustration, you know, for the last 8 years, I've been complaining about the fact that they've combined the Opportunity High School with the traditional high school in regards to graduation rates. This year, they should not be doing that. Brian, before he passed away, said he was going to make sure that this year they were going to change that. So we have a graduation rate for the Marshall High School of 97%, I think, and maybe a little bit, a couple percentage points above that. Opportunity High School has its graduation rate around that 60, I don't know, 65, 64. Don't quote me on it. But normally they would have just combined those, and our graduation rate would have been around 88% for Marshall Public Schools. And we know that that's not the case. So there's a lot of nuance into these reports that you have to be cautious about. When you look at even the comparisons that Don ran for example, with the alternative versus traditional, non-traditional versus traditional, we don't know if Northville has a traditional and non-traditional school. We don't know if the other three that are above us have those. They could be just strictly traditional high schools, and we're comparing ourselves along with the alternative factored in. So those are the issues we have to continue to look at and continue to clean up, because the state isn't reporting that consistently.
All right, so I did want to jump out now. So we've talked about how the state did, how the county did, how we did, and then we compared those. All right, so let's just look internally for just a few slides, and that's what most of that book is looking at each grade and seeing how they did and showing how they did over the years. All right, and so I don't want to spend too much time on that, because if you're really interested, you can look. But how did we do last year in each grade? So let's first look at our math scores at the 3rd through 8th grade level. And you can see for us, 4th, 6th, and 8th grade made pretty dramatic jumps. 10%, 9%, 12%, they each increased quite a bit. But then in 3rd and 7th grade, we had decreases, which were also pretty dramatic. -10%, -9%. And then in 5th, it was basically flat. 1% is not much of a change at all. So we have this kind of swing back and forth in each one of those grades, which is very interesting for us as a school system. Why are we swinging from one grade to the other? When you look at data, especially across years, you want to try and level those out to always be, increases, or at least get up to the point that you want them to be, and then keep them there, so that no matter what students come to you, you've got systems in place that you're always improving student achievement, right? These kind of data, although we're really happy we got a 12% increase, that could be you got a wonderful group of students that year, right? And your teachers also did a great job, right? But then the next year, maybe they'll drop down to +3% because your students did a wonderful job and your teachers struggled that year, or vice versa. Does that make sense? So we notice in ELA a somewhat similar story. In 4th and 8th grade, we had increases of 8% and 11%. Decreases in 3rd and 7th, -6 and -11, so that swing. And then flat in 5th and 6th. So, and I just made the point that this is the same as math. So we had that that swinging again. So that'll be something when we talk as principals and as staffs and things like that. We'll be trying to figure out, okay, what are we doing right? How can we maximize that? And how can we minimize the things that are causing that back and forth action? And then finally, for our SAT scores, this is so new, we don't have the longitudinal data on it yet. But we've increased in EBRR, which is ELA, that's evidence-based reading and writing, by 5.4. We've decreased in math by 3.9, and overall we had an increase of 1.5, which is really, when you're looking at 1,061 points, so slight. It's basically the same score. All of those, the 5.4 and 3.9 in that big of a score, are very, very small.
I know that 3rd grade in elementary is like a big year for 3rd graders. Does that hold anything to do with, does it have any effect on the drop like that we see here? And then 4th grade it goes up again, like you were saying, it kind of goes up and down. Like, is 7th grade one of those years too for middle school where there's new concepts and things like that? And then in 8th grade it's kind of like, oh, we pick it back up again? Or is this just unique for this last year?
Well, you can always look back and see, again, when you're looking at these, and we have the charts that go back, like we have 9 years worth of data that we can look back on to see, well, is it always, in 9th, 7th grade, like you said, that they're dropping? Is that always a lower year, or is it 1 year that we had a dip? And there's no true consistent pattern such as that.
Let me offer a little bit more explanation of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So part of it is the population snapshot in time, right? And 3rd grade is the first time they get assessed electronically, or up to this point they have. Internally, we do some assessments online, but not very much in earlier else. So really, third grade is the first time they get exposure to be assessed online with high stakes tests. That has something to do with it. And then when you look at each of the years, we have explanations on the MEP and every year going what change and what variable occurred that were significant and systemic to our system. So for example, when they changed the cut scores for MEP from one year to another and the cut scores went up, of course the scores stayed the same, but on the new scale looked like they were lower. When we went from MEP to M-STEP, that was a major shift and change. When they changed the M-STEP from ACT to SAT, that was a major step and change. Now they have writing components on the SAT or on the M-STEP, but they don't really score it unless they write nothing at all in their paper and then they get a negative. Other than that, everybody pretty much gets scored the same regardless of what quality of writing it is. So every year there's something that changes in the dynamics of that. That's an assessment response. Then when you look at the individual students in our curriculum, yes, like in particular in math is really significant shift when you get into the 5th, 6th grade, really the 6th grade level. And we always see that our math takes a dip because they go into much higher levels of requirement of rigor in mathematics. They have to apply multiplication, division, fractions, and so forth into their mathematics in 6th grade. If they didn't catch all that at full proficiency by 4th and 5th grade, they're going to be behind when they start that 6th grade until they can catch up and remediate and then catch up within the context of math. So there's all kinds of responses to your question. Part of it has to do with curriculum, part of it has to do with the assessment, part of it really has to do with the student classes coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think this might be the last chart that I'm going to show you. I did want to break out, and you won't find this one in your volume that I gave you, but all the data is there. This breaks apart every elementary school and gives it each its own line, taking 3rd through 8th as a single M-STEP score over the years. And basically, I just wanted to show you from this that all buildings increased, that'd be this last little step right here. All buildings increased over the last year on their M-STEP proficiency. The only one that didn't was Hughes, which had this little kind of leveling, slight 10 downward, which, again, if we're looking at this kind of statistical trend, you know, yeah, we wish that it tipped the other way, but it's not really all that big of a deal in 1 year. It's not anything we should get alarmed and, you know, be upset about. But all of them, including Harrington, increased over the year, and I've got more on Harrington in just a moment. So here's some major takeaways from our comparison with the county and the state for the elementary. And again, you'll see this throughout all the data, is that Marshall Public Schools, our aggregate proficiency data, we exceeded Calhoun County in all areas and grades except for one. And that one was 7th grade. And in that one, we tied in reading, and we were only behind it by 1% in math. Again, statistically pretty insignificant. So compared to the county, we did very, very well, as you would expect, because you saw that one chart that we were above when we took the broad look. Walters, Gordon, and Hughes exceeded the state, now not the county, but the state, in ELA in all grades but one. And that was Hughes' 3rd grade, which was 3% below. But other than that, we exceeded the state in every single area in ELA. And Walters, Gordon, and Hughes met or exceeded the state in math in both 3rd and 4th grades. Walters also exceeded it in 5th. Oops. There we go. Oh, and I already showed you this, and I already showed you this. And then finally, I want to leave you with some kind of notable achievements. First of all, we should all be very congratulatory to Walters Elementary, which again, and you'll see this throughout the data, they far exceeded both the state and county M-STEP proficiency levels in all areas. very, very impressive achievements. They always do very well, and yet again, they did well this year. Many of our schools had great achievements, and you'll see that throughout the graphs. You know, Gordon had 2 years in reading that they jumped up 10, 12%, you know, things like that. I mean, great achievements throughout. But what I'm saying for Walters is they were consistently above in both math, reading, social studies, and it's very impressive, and they've done that many years. Harrington, I wanted to make a special point of bringing out. They are showing clear signs of growth. And here's how we know that. There's 7 state tested areas, and they showed proficiency increases in 4 of them. In one of them, 5th grade math, they rose 10% over last year. So they're increasing in most of the areas, and one of them they took a significant jump. And then here's another sign that things are looking really good there. In the 3 areas that they didn't show that they were making achievements, the slips, or where they failed to make that growth, were very slight. One of them they were even, one of them they were -1%, and one of them -3%. So again, 2 of those, I keep saying statistically insignificant, but a 0 and 1% are, you know, so close, it's not worth talking about. And 3%, yeah, we could work on that, but still not that much. So Harrington is showing a huge improvement, and you saw that on the one line, which was a clear vertical line up, and we're going to keep seeing that go up. We feel confident as this year and the future years go on. And then finally, you saw this in a couple of the graphs. We should be congratulating, that should say MHS, on achieving top SAT scores. Those scores are very impressive, and they continue to basically move up. So if they continue that, boy, we're going to have 1600s everywhere. So it's very impressive.
One other thing I can say about Harrington in particular, this does not assess our kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grades. And we rely on, as you recall last year when we took the deep dive into Fontes and the new version, we rely on the benchmark assessments and the progress monitoring that we do throughout the year. And Robert can demonstrate 75% of the kids in those grade levels had growth, 1-year growth for 1 year of instruction this past year. That was a transition year too, when you think about it. New principal, new structures, new culture and climate, new expectations, and so forth. So I am really looking forward to seeing what next year and the year after brings. And remember, we said 3 to 5 years for us to bring this back up to where it needs to be. And our sense of that is we're technically into our 3rd year, 2 different administrators. Consistency is going to count, leadership counts, and we'll see how they continue to grow this year and next.
I think that's if you don't mind me adding to that, I think that's really a great point, that these measure proficiency, which means they measure how much students know at a certain point in time. None of them show growth, how much a student learned over a particular year. This coming up year, what I'm hoping to be able to show you, so the book will be like 100 pages long, but we'll have the NWEA data on top of that. And that's what that is designed to show, is how much students have grown over the year. So when we bring those 2 elements together, is how much students learned over a year and where they got to. So not just did they make the finish line, but how well did they run the race. Those 2 pieces together are going to be very powerful to us. And our teachers are really excited about using those to help kids to achieve. So it'll be great.
So is 2% really a big difference if you don't have that many kids? Like if you're just doing 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, is that possibly just a fluke, or is that when you look at it that is a definite trend, or do we have to wait till next year to really see?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're talking trends, you have to wait years, but you're right, 100 kids, 2% is 2 kids, right? So 50 kids is 1 kid, you know, so.
Yeah, if you really want to look at trend analysis, and I used to give you this chart every year, which showed every single year of the assessment results. And what was really good when we had the meet at the time, and it was going on for a number of years, I I was ecstatic when I got here. If you remember, the oldies can remember me talking about the fact we actually formed a cohort for the first time. And a cohort means we had the same group being able to look at assessment 4 years, 5 years, 6 years running. We formed a 3-year cohort, a 5-year cohort when I first got here. So you can see the kids in 3rd grade be assessed in 4th grade, be assessed in 5th grade, and see whether or not they hold their level of proficiency, even though the rigor and expectations of the curriculum have increased. That's really a significant picture when you can see that. We haven't had that opportunity to look at those cohorts since MSTEP came in, because we've been making changes. The state's been making changes. So until we get a stabilized effort of assessment, till we can see that implemented over years and you can follow the same cohort throughout that testing cycle or that window as they go, proficiency is only a snapshot in time of the kids sitting at the monitor. It really doesn't tell you a lot more than that. And yet we hang so much on it. We want to talk a lot more about growth. We want to use NWEA and the MAP assessment to demonstrate growth. As long as our kids are growing and moving and our teachers seeing that, and we start getting much more than 1 year of growth, we start getting 1.5 years of growth or things like that, you're going to see the scores fall where they need to fall. And we're not going to worry about it so much. But the focus has to be on growth. The other thing that Don and I talked about is the gap analysis that you're going to see data in. There's a gap analysis on gender, on race, and also on economically disadvantaged in every one of those sections of the chart. Whether it's 3rd grade math or 3rd grade ELA, or it's 4th grade math or 4th grade ELA, all the way through to 8th grade. Also in your appendix in pages 1 through 4, you'll see the raw data or the hard data in the percentile on proficiency relative to race, and it's broken down much more than just, you know, kids of color versus white counterparts. It's actually breaking down to Native American and Hispanic and Asian and so forth, and you'll see how those kids performed. Normally you don't see that data because the n size, the number size of that sample, is too small to report statewide. So we are now at a point where we have enough African Americans that are over 30 in sample size within every one of our grades that we can report that publicly and statewide, which is really great because then we can get some really true comparisons. But the question is going to be, we're going to bring another report back to you and have another discussion about GAP. We really want to take a look at GAP and see what we can do to start changing that. So when you see those things, just pay attention to it when you read it, and we'll bring it back to you.
Has the NWEA, is it taking place? Has it taken place? Is it scheduled to happen soon? I guess I'm not sure of when that's being administered to the students.
Yep, so it's 3 times a year, and the very first time, all buildings have pretty much finished, except middle school is right at the tail end of it. And that's the first benchmark for the students. We don't know growth or anything, it just takes the temperature of the water. And then the second time is in January, and the final time is in May.
And what's the turnaround for getting results from those tests for both the families and the students and then the teachers as well, so they can make changes for what the students need?
So teachers can actually get results almost immediately after the students are done. But once everyone is done testing in the whole district, I basically press the finish button, and then within 24 hours we can get all the reports and use them however we'd like to. And then we can start printing off parent reports and sending them home. And this year we'll have to talk about how we're going to do that since it's new, and we want to make sure we don't just send home like a book like this or something like that.
Yeah, I think the reports are pretty, I like them because they're easy to understand.
Did you think
yes.
they are? Okay. That's
yes,
a concern of mine is I don't want a parent to look at it and go, whoa, what is this? And
I did not think it was overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot of information on there, but I think the way it's reported and the graphs that are on there, it makes it easy to, or I guess I should say easier to understand.
Great. Good. Can I answer any other questions?
But this, in talking to members of the public, this is really hard to explain this, and I don't know how to address it. And I guess I'm thinking out loud, could we do FAQs? Could we do a press release? And I know that's additional things to ask, but it's just, this is something parents look at and they get into little bits and pieces, and then they conclude that Olivet is the best school in Calhoun County, right? And okay, well, you read one tiny little part of it, and I don't know what the answer is. The state has successfully made this so complicated that outside of people that look at this stuff all the time, nobody understands it. And so how do you say we're a good district? I mean, I think you just explained that we are, but it wasn't a 3-word answer. It was a...
Well, you know, I think it's a
60-page, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the state is getting better at putting good data out there on the dashboard. And they're expanding the areas that they're reporting on, like how well are we doing with extracurricular or co-curricular, what do we offer, those different things. There's nuances now being added to really round out that picture. As a parent concerned and interested in our district, they can go to those comparisons and really look at those comparisons and in fairly quick order. If they know that they're moving into this region, or am I going to go to Homer, am I going to go to Olivet, or am I going to go to Marshall? And you can look at the comparisons quite clearly and know the distinctions between the three. Question is, what do we do about it, and how do we put that out there? Only the reporting that we do in the board right now, and I'm not sure how much we'll wrap Ryan into that when we start talking about promotion and marketing, but people want to know data, but we have to make it fair and reasonable, and it's got to be a measuring stick that everyone uses, so it's fair to the other districts as well.
Yeah, and I'm saying I don't envy, because it's hard to explain to people.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks,
Thank
Don.
you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you. So now we're going to move to C, School Advanced Superintendent Growth Goals.
You guys remember this, right? This is the formative rubric for district leadership, which is the formative rubric you used in my evaluation as superintendent. You should probably have these copies at home, so hopefully you do. If you don't, take these with you. If you do, then leave it here.
I see my filing system, right? It's a pile of paper.
Okay. So last year, I in our first process here, I picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had picked 8 domains or characteristics within domains, and 3 that applied to us in the domain number 1 on results. So a total of 11. This is what was last year and what I'm going to propose for this year. I want you to, I'm going to review these and show you where they're at, so I want you to just kind of take note. I guess if you're going to keep the copy, circle the areas that I'm talking about in rubric. Preferably circle highly effective, because that's the bar that you want me to pursue when you get to the rubric, because the rubric breaks down minimally effective, well, ineffective with no narrative, minimally effective, effective, and highly effective. Becky, do you have a copy of this yet over there? Mm-hmm. Okay. So on this one, I had circled all the specific benchmarks or areas under the 5 domains that I did last year. So circle means I did last year. Under the triangles and the underlining, those are the areas I want to focus on this year. And there's others, I'm going to keep focusing on the other 13, but I'm going to be needing to also focus on these additional ones. The reason, the domain 1 stays the same: student achievement, teacher performance, and overall progress on district school improvement plan. Those are the measurements under domain 1. I could look at achievement gap, but I'm going to start that conversation now, and in the following year, we're going to really be digging into that to see if we can move the measurement mark. The gap, there's a presentation I want to give you that really illustrates what happens with GAP and how it gets created just statistically, and then how you can see it's insurmountable for us to close the gap after 4th grade. But I don't think that says enough of what we're capable of doing. I think we need to take a look at that and really challenge it. But in domain 2 under leadership, if you look on page, if you look on page 3, under domain 2 leadership, factor A, vision and learning for learning and achievement, characteristic 1, mission and vision. That's the rubric that I want you to be focusing on, because that's the area that I want to bring you forward with in January. I want to do that in January because I want to wait until the new board members get seated and we kind of repurpose and re-stabilize ourselves in the mission and the vision that we have for the organization. Then on the next page, on page 4, is goals and expectations. Again, that's the rubric that we're going to be focused on for this coming year as a new area for growth. If then you go to domain number 3, and I'm going to tell you the page. Page number 14. Domain 3 is about systems alignment. Under factor 3, high quality reliability instructional programs, I'm putting down there technology to expand learning opportunity. The reason why I'm doing that one now is because we have a teacher shortage. The state has a teacher shortage. Multiple states in the United States have teacher shortages. It has become endemic to what's going on with public education. I can tell you we're not at the tipping point yet, but we're getting close to it. We have reports from some of our universities that are saying they're having low enrollment for students wanting to go into teaching. In fact, one close university says that they barely have enough to do their secondary ed certifications. So if we have that kind of a process to change the narrative about public ed and teachers in general, and make it more positive and recognize all the strengths that our teachers have, et cetera, and the challenges they face in the midst of all this assessment and doom and gloom about public education in America. Even if we change that narrative, it's going to take another 4 to 5 years for that narrative to have impact. And all the time we're going to be dealing with open positions come October, which we currently have. So with that, we need to also start thinking about what are the ways that we can use technology in a smarter fashion to be able to provide opportunities for kids with guided practice, guided interaction. Let them do the work, flip the classroom, let the kids get the instruction when they're out of school, and have them have the opportunity to be practicing and training themselves while they're in school under supervision. There's all kinds of techniques we have to think about, up to and including what is our system of delivery for public education. Is it going to be 8:30 to 3:45 every day for every kid? Is the high school going to continue to start at 7:30? Are they going to start later? Are they going to have more flexible hours for instruction? There's a lot of things we have to think about systemically on how are we going to address this issue, because we cannot teach a classroom with 50 or 60 kids in a science course without having some creative ways to address that. So I want to start exploring that now. There are some things we're already adopting and taking a look at, which are primarily, if you allow the depth or the characteristic, it's more like a supplement and an assist to skill sets and what we need to do with our kids in regards to math and literacy. It's not full-blown instruction. We do Grad Point right now, online coursework, which is really about remediation and credit recovery for students that find themselves falling behind. It's not about the high rigor that we expect for kids to achieve as they go forward. We have dual enrollment with universities and colleges, and KCC just gave us a full list of all the courses they have to offer that amounts to an M-step or expectation on performance on these different course levels, like biology or chemistry or what have you. So kids can take dual enrollment in a college course and be able to earn a credit that's I'm sorry, I'm lacking the terminology. What is the state system called? Michigan Merit. So with the Michigan Merit expectations, colleges do a crosswalk and show what they have and they offer. But again, that's going to cost us money. It'll be online or at the location in which they're taking it. So we have to just think clearly through this process. It's going to take about 2 years for us to really think that we're at an emergency status. I don't mean we as a Marshall Public Schools. I mean we as a public ed system in Michigan. I don't think the state really sees this as an emergency circumstance yet. We just had I think I told you about this last year. The research project from Michigan State said we don't have a teacher shortage, according to the research they did with the $2.2 million research grant from the feds. And then we asked everybody in the room how many have teacher openings right now, and it's the end of September, and all the superintendents raised their hand. So the reality is what we're experiencing is a lot different than what's being said out there, and I think when people come to grips with it, it might be a little bit too late on the tipping point. So heads up on that. That's where I'm at with that one. Rationale why I picked it. Domain 3 on page 16. Under factor B, safe, effective, efficient school operations, I picked systems, processes, and programs. And on page, systems, process, pardon me?
16.
And on page, that's 16. Then on page 19 it was supposed to be technology expand, where is it?
Non-instructional technology.
Yeah, thank you. 19, non-instructional technology, expanded learning opportunities. I'm sorry, technology to expand learning opportunities. And then non-instructional technologies under item B. Both of those systems and non-instructional technology have to do, in my view, about school safety initiatives that we're doing, and those types of things relative to safe, effective, efficient school operations. So we're going to focus on that, or I will focus on that this year. In domain 4, board relations is on page 20. It's a rubric I want to be looking at. We have a significant change coming up. We may have 2, possibly 3, hopefully not, but 2, possibly 3 changes in the seats, and we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And so I'm going to be focusing heavily on board relationships. Also within that domain on community building factors, under domain 4 is communications and media relations. You know that we've been working with Bluefish. Becky and I just got done finalizing what those expectations are. We'll be bringing that periodically back to you about what we expect that Ryan Traver is going to be doing for us as a school district in regards to managing, synchronizing, having consistency in messaging. We're going to be talking about our logo for the Red Hawk and how we're going to utilize those logos consistently across the district. Protect our branding and making sure that really good information gets out there, like the leadership reports that we find so valuable when they come in. Those are really critical points. We want to make sure that while the Facebook pages at the building levels are covering those things, which they most do, not all real well, but most do, we also want to make sure that information is real time, and that when something happens, it gets to Ryan, and Ryan can put that on the district Facebook page and get that news out there quickly. So it's not old news within 4 days or 3 days, but it's something that just occurred. So that's another area that I'll be focused on. Under page 25, under school district improvement factors, systematic use of multiple data sources. We do that now. But I'd like to see how that's done with everybody on the same page. We're looking forward to NWEA and the MAP and the assessments that does. With our early literacy task force that we have, when we're talking about Fountas and Pinnell and reading, constructs, comprehension, and writing, we're really good with that. One of the areas that we need to look closely at in a more intentional way is mathematics. And we have to look at numeracy as well as literacy growing through. And we can't give up the initiatives that we have with literacy. Literacy is absolute what we've committed to and what we need to do, but we also can't forget that we have other focuses, and primarily it's going to be literacy and numeracy in early grades and how we move that through middle school to get them prepared for high school. And then the final domain is 5 on page 29, leadership development. I've talked about leadership development. I've talked to my individual leadership team members about that. I'm trying to give opportunities for people to continue to explore their interests. We're trying to get a couple candidates involved in the aspiring superintendents training, because it's always great to have them understand that, so they can understand what it looks like from my side of the table. It's exactly why we do and why we sent a number of highly effective teachers and invited them into the education master's degree in ed leadership through Western Michigan. A number of those teachers came back and interviewed internally for the one and only principal position we had. And a number of them that went through that actually are going on and working with me and asking for consultation and coaching, because that's what they want to understand and learn, and possibly go into administration or just stay in the classroom teaching with that understanding in mind. And it just speaks volumes for us to have those kind of leadership opportunities to work throughout our system, so people see there's pathways and there's opportunities. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to change the job and get out of the teaching realm. You can actually have that better understanding and then stay in teaching and help improve the whole entire genre that goes on around you in that building.
Randy,
So, yeah.
have you seen that it has improved relations between the teachers and like the principal at the schools and stuff, just increased
Oh
understanding?
yeah, I can tell you that 2 out of the 3 individuals that volunteered to go into the school within the school, the middle school, were in those programs. So they immediately leaped to teacher leaders. And we were looking for them anyways, because they were teacher leaders before, but we wanted to make sure that they got a broader view of what it means to run a school. We have a lead teacher that came to me, called me during a student crisis at Hughes, and I went over there and interceded with them, and then she came back and said, can you give me some coaching about what went on, what I could do differently, am I empowered to make this decision or not? And I was able to sit down with her for about an hour and review those things. So we're seeing some really good benefit from that across the board. What I'd like to see is more and more is that as colleagues, they're impacting that in a positive way, where they're challenging each other about thinking differently. But ultimately, anything we do to improve leadership across the board, whether it's in the teacher, in the classroom, in the hallways, in the offices, or in central administration, is all very important for us. And then finally, the new one is going to be on page, last page, 33 is education and advocacy. You know, this might seem like an easy pass for me because I've been heavily involved in it. But there's a lot more going on. I mean, the State Department of Civil Rights has asked me to come to another opportunity for challenging our school districts and thinking differently about diversity and inclusion. I'm going to accept that. Those conversations have to be had. I'm trying to stay current, but there's a lot of other things I can do. I'm on the state level professional growth and leadership committee for the state of Michigan with MASA. But I want to bring those things back to the board a lot more succinctly and intentionally, as opposed to just giving you a report that I was involved in this activity. I want you to understand what I'm bringing to that environment versus what I'm getting from it. So before I go on that trip, I wanna make sure that you know, it's only one day, meeting over in DeWitt, it's not a big deal. But, before I go, I want you to know what the talking points are gonna be from my perspective, and so you understand how that aligns with our mission and our vision, and why it's important for us to get those messages out there.
I will always remember Jace Bolger saying, I want to hear from elected board members. He appreciates your position, appreciates Becky Rocco's position at the time, but and so that helping us to effectuate that communication, I think is
Absolutely,
really is a big deal.
means the world to them.
Yeah.
Because they can dismiss us in caucus. They can't dismiss elected officials. You guys are elected officials, so they will not dismiss your opinion in caucus. But for a superintendent, they will.
They shouldn't, but they will.
So you can see it's, I'm almost filling up the page. But I'm gonna still report and do touch points on each of the ones I did this past year, because you're gonna still see evidence that I'm still continuing along those lines. Like, for example, leadership team relations is an ongoing thing that I'm working on and developing. And that's getting much more productive in that process, and so I can't let that go. I won't let that go. It's something that we, ultimately, every one of these things on this page is gonna be something I'm doing and having artifact and demonstration that it's being accomplished. So why don't you take the information, think about it, refresh your memory about what it was for the school advance evaluation and that process. And then, you know, we'll come back and have some more discussion about it.
And Scott, I know this is new to you, so I'll get you caught up on
All right, appreciate that.
how this came about and that.
All right.
So, now this is good. This is, I mean, this is the next step with what we did last year. A lot more definition on your eval gave us a much better framework to work from. So, I think it's gonna be great.
Good. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you. So we're gonna move on to action item financial, award bid for updates and installation of playground equipment at the Kroll building.
Background, please. The background area, the playground area and equipment requires updating at the Kroll building to bring it in compliance for 2 to 5 year olds. Bids were sought and 3 bids were received for services and equipment. The board will now consider awarding the bid for updates to the playground area and installation of some new equipment at the Kroll building. It is a recommendation of the Shamrock Center to award the bid to Midwest Recreational Products LLC in the amount of $18,665. It is a recommendation of the superintendent that action item financial be approved as presented.
Look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Support. Okay, so discussion.
Becky, you got anything else to say about what that means, what's within that bid?
So we purchased about a $25,000 play structure through GSRP last year. And so this will be installing, the cost to install it, and then bringing, you know, upgrading some current equipment that's over there. So that's about it. We'll be paying for it through the sinking fund.
And you were good that all 3 bids were pretty, they were all touching on the same pieces, the same equipment needs and installs.
Midwest is local.
Pardon me?
I said Midwest is local. Right, Spring Arbor?
Spring Arbor, yeah.
Just used to run across them in Jackson. So
And is this playground equipment just within the fenced in area, or also playground equipment added outside of that?
This is just for the install, the bulk of it is for the GSRP, so it would be inside the fence.
Okay.
So
we took down a lot of the other equipment that was outside the fence because it was a safety hazard for the neighborhood kids or anybody that was playing on that. So, balance beams that were old, you know, wood things that could sliver you up really bad, and
all the really fun stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff that we used to do. Yeah.
When is this supposed to take place as far as?
We haven't scheduled it yet, just because we were waiting for board approval.
Hopefully before it gets too cold.
We'll call them as soon as we have approval.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're at Carrie.
Yes.
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 Okay. You can make the call.
Can install tomorrow.
Yeah.
Text them.
They're local.
Okay, we are now at public comments. Would either of you gentlemen like to get into this mic? We will move on to board member comments for which no action may be taken at this meeting.
May I jump ahead and make an announcement?
Yes, sir.
So we just received this at 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's from MDE GEMS. It says, "We are very excited to inform you that your Marshall Plan for Talent Concept Summary has been approved to move on to the next phase of consideration." That's huge. It says you will receive specific feedback on your concept summary no later than Monday, October 15th for the talent agreement phase, which we're already working on because we were being positive about anticipating this. We will be asking you to provide more detail regarding your consortium's plan to transform how you create talent. And then they have a whole list of talking points and coaching points for us. Cool. So we made it through over the first hurdle. I think the talent consortium that we developed, which is 6 districts in the eastern Calhoun, western Jackson County, is an incredible start with over 16 manufacturers willing to be on board and 3 universities or community colleges. So it's a good step forward, and we're really excited about it. So we hope to be a first adopter of this grant.
So was the cutoff at 5 o'clock today? Or is it still can be notified?
Pardon me?
Do you know when the cutoff for when they would notify people? It was
today was when they were notified.
Okay. Just the whole thing with Battle Creek Public Schools, I haven't gotten a notification from them yet. They were, I went to a meeting last Friday, and so this is Battle Creek Public Schools with Kellogg Foundation and Battle Creek Community Foundation, and I just sat there and thought, they have all these resources, and we've got Randy working on this, right? And then so you've done a yeoman's job putting all this together.
Yeah, but we've got some incredible stuff. Ben Wallace has done
with many partners.
Yeah, with many partners. So that being said, though, I also received a question about another consortia that we're associated with, and I told him I wasn't the contact person, so I have no idea. I believe that all the applicants were notified today whether they received or didn't receive. If they didn't receive, they were going to get a number of feedback points for them to ask any questions. It doesn't mean they're out of the game. It just means for this round they're not in the next step, and they can come back and reapply at another point. So I'm really charged that we have the opportunity to be a first adopter for this initiative.
Very cool. Awesome. Congrats.
Great.
Very cool.
Anybody want to try to follow that?
I was going to say that I don't have anything that tops that.
I just want to remind people the candidate forum on the 23rd that we're supposed to RSVP by the 18th.
Yes.
That if you want to ask your candidates what they're going to do about the teacher shortage, that might be a good time.
Perfect.
So you're going to name the one that made the comment, or you're just going to leave it quiet?
Leave it quiet.
Superintendent of the ISD told me, so.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.